So you don't drink coffee?
I don't drink coffee at all.
Okay. Because you've never mentioned it. I've listened to a few of your videos. You've never mentioned coffee. Why don't you drink coffee?
Okay, so this is a whole thing, and your audience is going to hate me.
Go for it.
Okay.
They're going to hate both of us at the end
of this. Well, they're especially going to hate me because we're hopefully we're also going to talk about chocolate. Yeah. But so a couple of things about coffee. So what is coffee? Coffee is a seed from a plant. And when I think about plants and the parts of plants that plants don't want you to eat, seeds are probably some of the most highly defended parts of plants. So we're talking nuts, which are seeds, grains. We talked about oats and quinoa, but also wheat, etc. People know those grains. Beans, like a coffee quote bean, which are legumes, or black beans or lentils, and then nuts. Right? We talk nuts, grains, seeds, and legumes, right? So those are all seeds because if you plant them in the ground, they grow into a plant. We just call them different things, but they're all seeds. That's a plant baby, meaning that if that gets eaten by an animal and the animal is just says, oh, that tasted great, no problem, and it just gives the animal nutrients, those plants are never going to evolve because those animals are just going to eat the heck out of those seeds. So the plants will put defense chemicals in the seeds, and seeds are very highly defended. We talk about saponins, we talk about phytic acid, we've talked a little bit about oxalates, but in the case of coffee, you have defense chemicals in the seeds of that plant, like anything else. Caffeine is actually a defense chemical that the plant puts there. Now, interestingly, in the doses we have with caffeine, it reinforces eating the beans because of the way that caffeine affects dopamine in the human brain. And who knows why this is, but it's a problematic thing for humans, I think mostly from the perspective of sleep. Mm-hmm. So no one wants to hear this, but the quarter life of caffeine is 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours, meaning that if you drink a cup of coffee at, let's say, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning, a lot of people are waiting now, like 90 minutes after they wake up to drink their coffee. So depending when you wake up, when you drink your first cup of coffee, an average cup of coffee has 150 milligrams to 200 milligrams of caffeine in it. So that 200 milligrams of caffeine, if you drink one single cup of coffee, a quarter of that is still in your body affecting the physiology of your brain to initiate sleep, to help you through the sleep stages 12 hours after you drink the coffee. So if you drink coffee at 8 or 9 and you go to sleep at 9 or 10, you still have about a quarter of the caffeine, So 50 milligrams of caffeine in your body at that point. Now, how is that affecting your sleep stages? This is really the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. So doing that every day. Now that's pretty benign. One cup of coffee, quote, benign, at 9 a.m. I don't do it. And I'm saying benign relative to what I'm going to describe next, which is probably a more typical pattern for people, which is a cup of coffee at 8, a cup of coffee at 10, and maybe coffee at 1 or 2. Now at that point, the half-life of caffeine means you've got half of the caffeine is 6 hours. So if you drink coffee at 1 or 2 and you go to sleep at 10 p.m., you got a lot of caffeine in your body. And you've got all of the cumulative caffeine in your body. So say you have 3 cups of coffee throughout the day, that's 600 milligrams of caffeine, and you have them at 3 different parts throughout the day. You could potentially have 200 milligrams of caffeine still in your body when you go to sleep, or 150, which is the equivalent of 3/4 of a cup of coffee right before you go to sleep. That's absolutely going to affect your sleep architecture. And when we're talking about sleep architecture, it's just important to mention that there are a lot of things that we do that can negatively affect sleep architecture. Alcohol, cannabis, benzodiazepines, like Ambien, these all affect sleep architecture negatively, even though we think that some of them help us get to sleep more quickly, like alcohol or smoking marijuana for people to do that. They definitely change the architecture, and the architecture of sleep is such that the body wants to do non-REM and REM sleep. And if you do these things, you're going to sleep quicker, but the sleep quality is much worse.
So how do you feel about decaf?
So decaf usually has much, much less caffeine. Mm-hmm. So you're doing a much better thing for your body, but there are still other problems with coffee and caffeine,
because
right?
It's still seeds at the end of the day.
It's still a seed. There are mold toxins, right, in a lot of coffees, unless it's a wet process.
That's what's scaring me right now. I feel like everything's moldy.
A lot of grains are moldy because you also get mold on oats. So that's back to the oats. We didn't even talk about that with oatmeal. Yet another reason not to eat oatmeal. Even if it's organic oatmeal, it's going to be moldy. You're talking about fusarium molds. You're talking about all sorts of molds that have
I feel like shit when I eat oatmeal. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yeah, well,
because it was huge in the fitness industry for a while, making these protein oats, and I tried it because I wanted to be in with the trend. I felt like shit.
Well, it's awesome that you were aware enough to notice that. I think the problem for a lot of people is they're doing so many things, they have so many inputs that they may feel poorly, and they don't know if it's the fact that they slept late last night, they were up until 2 a.m. scrolling TikTok, or they ate a donut yesterday morning. There's so many inputs. They can't differentiate signal from noise.
I think people are also really checked out of their own bodies.
Yes.
100%. Like they can't really tell because they don't think about what's going in and out. And I think when you become really aware of what you're intaking, you become so much more aware of how you feel on a hour-to-hour basis in the day.
Exactly. And that's super important feedback. That is a huge takeaway for people. That to get to the point where you can distinguish, where you can really check in with your body, how are you feeling every hour to hour? That's really powerful, because you can think, man, I feel tired. I have a headache. What did I do? Was it, oh, I just ate a cinnamon roll, or I just ate some lentils, or I just ate some meat and that didn't make me feel good. Okay, great. Like whatever it is, like that helps people, I think, distinguish or determine what's going on. Maybe it was the fact that you just worked for an hour with the Wi-Fi router right next to your head, or who knows what it is, right?
Right.
All kinds of things. But going back to the coffee, yeah, there's mold. So yeah, if you wanted to really have the least problematic coffee, you could do a wet process coffee, which is supposed to limit the mold. That's decaf. And then even with that, you're still going to have acrylamide from the roasting process of the coffee, but nothing is completely benign. I mean, when you toast bread, you get acrylamide. So you're getting acrylamide, and then you're getting some of the perhaps anti-nutrients in the coffee, but it's much less problematic if you're doing decaf and you're doing wet process, so it's not moldy, and you're thinking about these things. But then who does that? Like, how many people drink decaf coffee?
Me.
Why?
I react really badly to caffeine. I'm an anxious person as it is, so I really don't need the extra caffeine. But also lately, I've done all of this lab work, and I can see mycotoxins in my system. I can see that I have a little bit of mold.
Do you like the taste?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying, like, why do I drink it at all?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's the taste. And I also think it's like society. You know, I work in this office all day. I see people with their coffees. I kind of want to be a part of it.
Right.
What would be an alternative? Goat milk?
Bone broth. People some want something warm. I mean, LA is like tricky. It's kind of cold here sometimes in the morning. I mean, it's the middle of July and it just started getting warm apparently. But I was visiting in March and April. It was freaking cold here. So
I'll show you the coffee I drink. It's really weird. It's like this instant Rishi Ganderma coffee that I might just throw in the trash at this point, because after listening to you, I'm like, why am I drinking this every day?
Or maybe just hold off on it for a few weeks and see if you feel differently.
Yeah, 100%. And see how my skin does.